The economic chain reaction reaches right into the American kitchen. Farmers, ranchers, and distributors are directly affected by declining tourism, without millions of tourists ordering breakfasts at hotels, buying local cheese, or tasting regional specialties. Producers lose major markets. In Wisconsin, dairy farmers once dumped thousands of gallons of milk because demand from the hospitality industry had collapsed. When producers lose buyers, they are forced to raise prices elsewhere to stay afloat. That means everyday Americans pay more at the supermarket. Suddenly, a pound of beef costs almost as much as a pair of sneakers, and the average family feels the pressure on every grocery trip. Make up for strict visa processes, high costs, and an image of hostility. Domestic tourists help fill some gaps, but they cannot match the level of spending brought by international visitors. For example, a family road tripping from Ohio to Florida spends significantly less than a family flying in from Europe or Asia for a 2-week stay. Some cities have experimented with high-tech solutions, virtual reality tours, AI-driven hotel services, and online campaigns. While these efforts sound modern, they miss the essence of travel. People do not cross oceans to be greeted by robots. They travel for human connection, authentic experiences, and cultural warmth. No amount of technology can replace a genuine smile from a host, or the feeling of being truly welcomed in a foreign land. The question now is, what happens if this decline continues not for months, but for years, or even a decade? The outlook is sobering. More than 10 million jobs connected to tourism could disappear permanently. Entire cities like Orlando, Las Vegas, and Miami risk transforming into new versions of the Rust Belt, filled with empty hotels and abandoned attractions instead of shuttered factories. Cultural festivals, music events, and street markets that once defined communities may become relics of the past, remembered only in photos and fading memories. The loss would not only be economic, but also cultural and psychological. Tourism has long been a source of pride for the United States, a symbol of its diversity and openness. If the world stops coming, America risks losing part of its identity as a beacon for travelers. An America without tourists still exists, but it lacks energy, connection, and vitality. It becomes like a musical instrument, missing its strings present, but unable to play a melody. For ordinary Americans, the consequences would continue to creep into everyday life. Job competition would grow fiercer as displaced tourism workers seek employment in other industries. Average incomes would shrink, while prices for essentials would keep climbing. Families would feel squeezed between higher bills and fewer opportunities. The American dream, once fueled by a vibrant service industry and cultural exchange, would begin to fade into an obituary of missed chances and lost appeal. This is not just about economics. It is about choices and perception. Does the United States want to continue building barriers, making travel a stressful ordeal, and pushing visitors toward other countries? Or does it want to adapt, simplify processes, and once again extend a welcoming hand? Other nations have already shown that small changes in visa policies, promotions, and hospitality can yield massive returns. If the US does not act, it risks being left behind in an increasingly competitive global tourism market. The sound of rolling suitcases in airports might seem like background noise, but it is in fact the heartbeat of countless businesses and households. When that sound fades, it is replaced by silence in diners, darkness in hotels, and stress in family kitchens. The decline of tourism is not just a story of empty seats on planes or empty beds in hotels. It is a story of ordinary people workers, families, retirees grappling with the consequences of an industry too important to fail. The real question is not if tourism will return, but when it does. Will the United States still hold the same appeal it once did? Or will travelers, now used to the red carpets of Paris, Tokyo, or Bangkok, decide that America is no longer worth the trouble? Around the world, other nations are seizing this moment of American hesitation as an opportunity. Countries in Europe are offering special post-pandemic travel incentives, cutting taxes on hotels, and subsidizing airline routes to make trips cheaper and smoother. In Asia, nations like Singapore, Malaysia, and Japan are pouring millions into campaigns that emphasize safety, hospitality, and affordability. Even in Africa, countries such as Rwanda and Kenya are positioning themselves as global travel gems, capitalizing on ecotourism and authentic cultural experiences. These nations are not just waiting for tourists, they are actively competing for them. While the United States debates visa backlogs and airport security, others are rolling out digital visas, cutting fees, and promoting social media campaigns designed to capture the imagination of travelers. What many forget is that tourism is also a form of soft power. A traveler who spends 2 weeks in France or Thailand doesn't just return home with souvenirs. They return with impressions, stories, and emotions that shape how they view that country for years. If the United States begins to fade as a preferred destination, it loses not just dollars, but influence. Each missed visit is also a missed opportunity for cultural exchange, goodwill, and global reputation. The Statue of Liberty, Yosemite, and the lights of Las Vegas may remain standing, but without visitors to marvel at them, their power as global symbols begins to weaken. In the end, this crisis is not only about economics, it's about the soul of the nation. For decades, America marketed itself as the land of dreams, the place where the world could come to explore, experience, and connect. But if the empty hotels, shuttered restaurants, and quiet airports of 2025 continue, then the story being told is no longer one of opportunity, but of decline. Tourists will continue to dream, but their dreams will take them to Parisian Tokyo streets or Mediterranean beaches. And unless the United States reclaims its role as a welcoming host, those dreams may never circle back to America's shores. This pressure builds silently. A retiree sees their pension check cover less food each month. A middle-class family postpones their summer vacation just to afford basic groceries and gas. A college student picks up extra shifts because tuition feels heavier when the cost of living keeps climbing. All of these struggles tie back, in part, to the silent decline of tourism. It might not be obvious at first glance, but the absence of visitors is reshaping the daily reality of countless households. Cities have tried to fight back. Las Vegas has launched promotional discounts, added free entertainment, and rolled out special packages to lure tourists. Florida has promoted its beaches to domestic travelers. New York has invested heavily in major cultural events, hoping to attract international attention. Yet the results have been disappointing. Discounts alone cannot. The United States is on the verge of losing more than just money. In 2025, experts warn that the tourism sector alone could shrink by over $60 billion. A number that looks abstract on paper but in reality affects everyone. It's not just about hotels, flights, or tourist attractions. That missing money trickles down into grocery bills, gas prices, rent, and even the ability of families to take a short vacation. What may seem like a simple statistic in a financial report is in fact a story that touches the lives of millions of ordinary Americans. Every unbooked hotel room in Las Vegas, every unsold ticket for a flight to New York, and every empty seat in a Florida seafood restaurant is not only a loss for businesses, but also a chain reaction that spreads across the economy. Think about it like this. When visitors stop coming, hotel staff work fewer hours, restaurant chefs prepare fewer meals, taxi drivers get fewer passengers, and even farmers supplying food to tourist-heavy areas see a sharp decline in demand. A silent hotel bed becomes more than just a vacancy. It is an electricity bill unpaid, a staff member not scheduled, and a local grocery store selling less food because there are fewer mouths to feed. When you multiply this across cities and states, you can see how the loss of international and domestic tourists creates ripples that shake the entire economy. Las Vegas, a city often described as the place where the lights never go out, has started to dim in ways that many never expected. Visitor numbers dropped by more than 10% in mid-2025 compared to the previous year. That may sound small, but picture a hotel with 1,000 rooms. More than 100 of those rooms would remain dark and silent on any given night. Scale that across the city and you're looking at tens of thousands of empty beds. Millions of dollars in lost revenue and thousands of jobs suddenly hanging by a thread. In fact, average hotel occupancy across some parts of Nevada is down by nearly 15%. That means bartenders, waiters, cleaners, entertainers, and countless others have had their hours cut, directly impacting their household budgets. Why is this happening? One big reason is the strength of the US dollar. For many foreign tourists, converting their local currency into dollars makes a trip to America feel like buying a luxury car. Europeans, who once dreamed of seeing New York or Los Angeles, Now look at their exchange rate and decide Paris, Rome, or Barcelona might be a better deal. The cost doesn't just stop at flights or hotels. Meals, entertainment, and shopping in the US all seem overpriced compared to alternatives. Add to that the increasingly strict visa processes, long waiting times, and intimidating border checks. And many visitors simply choose destinations where they feel more welcomed and less stressed. But the impact of these disappearing tourists doesn't stay within the boundaries of airports or hotels. It spills onto Main Street in small towns and big cities alike. Imagine a family-owned diner that once served breakfast to busloads of tourists every morning. With fewer travelers, tables stay empty, the cash register opens less often, and the owners are forced to cut staff or close earlier in the day. I recall one story from Atlantic City where a couple had run a seafood restaurant for 20 years. For decades, their place was a community hub, always full of customers. But as tourist numbers shrank, the line outside their restaurant disappeared. In early 2025, after struggling to make ends meet, they put up a for sale sign. 2 decades of hard work reduced to an empty storefront with faded memories. This is not an isolated story. Across Florida's coastal towns, restaurants and shops that depend on the summer tourist season are closing early, as if winter had arrived months ahead of schedule. In Hawaii, local businesses that once thrived on international visitors from Japan and South Korea are watching foot traffic drop, leaving them with too much stock and too few customers. These closures don't just mean fewer places to eat or shop. They mean entire communities losing part of their identity and vibrancy. The skies tell a similar story. International arrivals to the US fell by more than 12% earlier this year, and airports nationwide have reported declines in passenger traffic. On the surface, an empty airline seat might not sound catastrophic. But multiply that empty seat across tens of thousands of flights each month, and suddenly airlines face massive revenue gaps. To cover losses, they often raise prices on domestic routes, forcing Americans to pay more just to visit family or attend important events. An elderly grandfather in Texas, for example, cancelled a longer-awaited trip to see his grandchildren because the ticket cost had doubled compared to last year. That is not just a statistic, it's a personal heartbreak that reflects a larger economic reality. While Europe, Asia, and even parts of the Middle East are making travel easier with simplified visa processes, streamlined airport procedures, and enticing promotional campaigns, the United States seems to be moving in the opposite direction. Thailand has launched its Land of Smiles campaign. Japan is branding itself as the home of hospitality. And European nations are offering discounted packages to encourage longer stays. Meanwhile, tourists arriving in the US often face long queues, extensive questioning, and a general sense of unwelcome. Travel is more than logistics, it is an emotional experience. If the first thing a traveler feels when they land is stress or fear, The magic of Times Square or the Grand Canyon cannot erase that initial impression. For every international visitor who does not come, America loses an average of $4,300 in spending. Multiply that by millions of missing tourists, and you can see why analysts predict losses between $12 and $29 billion in international spending. For 2025, that money could have gone into corner diners in Chicago, pizza shops in New York, or family-owned souvenir stores in San Francisco. Instead, it is being spent in Bali, Paris, or Tokyo. And here lies the deeper danger. Tourism is not just about revenue. It is about America's image in the world. When families choose Paris over New York, they are making a statement not only about cost, but about comfort and perception. If the United States begins to lose its status as a top destination, that loss may extend beyond tourism into other industries and international relationships. A suitcase rerouted from JFK Airport to Charles de Gaulle is not just a vacation choice. It represents a shift in global trust and preference.